You know, the other day I was at the park, just watching the kids play,
Uh-huh.
and I overheard this group. They must have been like 8 or 9 years old,
Yo.
and they were just casually tossing around these words,
Right?
words that honestly would have sent me running for cover back in my day.
Yeah. I mean.
And it got me thinking, like, is this just the norm now?
Mm.
Is cursing just losing all its power, all its shock value?
It's a fascinating question.
It really is.
It really is, and it's something that I think a lot of people are thinking about.
Yeah, well, luckily for us, we've got stacks of research on this very topic.
We do.
Articles, studies, even some personal anecdotes about kids and cursing these days.
That's right. It's
So,
going to be interesting.
yeah, our mission today is to really unpack this whole phenomenon,
Okay.
to make sense of it all.
I like it.
And maybe, just maybe, come away with some insights.
Absolutely.
Some insights that'll help us navigate this tricky terrain. Because it is tricky, isn't it?
It really is,
Yeah.
especially these days.
I mean, one of the things that really jumped out at me from the research
Yeah.
was this whole idea of a respect gap
Great.
between generations.
Yeah, it's not just about the words themselves. It's about, I think, how those words kind of reflect that changing dynamic between kids and adults these days.
Yeah, like back in the day, there was this clear sense of authority,
For sure.
like almost a fear of getting in trouble
Right.
for stepping out of line.
Yeah, you just knew.
You
didn't
just
even
kn-
think about it.
Exactly.
You just knew.
But now,
Yeah,
I don't know, it feels like those lines have blurred.
they have. They definitely have.
And maybe that's reflected in the way kids are using language.
Absolutely, yeah. And, one study that we have actually points to a decline in what they call formal deference,
Oh, interesting.
which is, that sense of automatic respect for authority figures
Okay.
simply because of their position or age.
I see. So it's not that kids are like intentionally being disrespectful.
Right.
It's more that the whole concept of respect has kind of evolved.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And that evolution is influenced by, a whole bunch of factors. Changes in parenting styles,
Mm-hmm.
the rise of social media, where kids are just exposed to
Wow.
all sorts of language and behaviors that might not fly, let's say, in a more traditional setting.
Right. Yeah.
So
It's a whole different ball game.
it is. It really is.
And speaking of social media, one article we have actually argues that
Yeah.
that the internet has created this kind of wild west of language
Totally.
where anything goes.
Uh-huh.
Very few filters.
And that constant exposure
Yeah.
can contribute to what we call semantic satiation.
Okay, break that down for me.
Basically, the more you hear a word,
Mm-hmm.
the less impact it has.
Okay, so those words that once held so much shock value
Mm-hmm.
are starting to lose their edge.
In a way, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the concept of diminishing returns, if you're just constantly bombarded with strong language,
Right.
it loses its ability to shock
Yeah.
or offend.
But hold on, if those words are losing their power,
Yeah?
does that mean kids are just going to keep pushing?
Good question.
And
Boundaries further.
See, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because even though those words might be, losing some of that shock value,
Right.
there's still a sense of rebellion
Sure.
and boundary testing inherent in kids' use of them.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to figure out where the lines are,
Exactly.
what they can get away with, how
Yeah.
far they can push
Push it.
before there's a reaction.
Right. And from a developmental standpoint, that's completely normal.
Of course.
Kids are naturally curious. They
Yeah.
want to experiment.
They do.
And language is just one of the tools they use to do that.
So then how do we, as adults, navigate this? Good question.
Because on the one hand, we don't want to overreact
Yeah.
to every little slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
we also need to set some boundaries.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah. And it's one that we're going to delve into much deeper
Right.
as we continue this deep dive.
Because, let's be honest,
Please.
this whole issue of kids and cursing,
Yeah,
it can feel like a minefield for parents.
it can.
You want to be the cool parent,
Right.
the one who's not fazed by a few bad words.
Yeah.
But you also
Yeah.
you also want to raise, respectful, responsible human beings.
And finding that balance
Yeah,
can be incredibly tricky,
for sure.
especially in today's world where the rules are constantly changing.
Right. Which brings us back to that central question we posed earlier.
Uh-huh.
Is cursing simply becoming the norm?
Hmm.
Are we headed towards a future
Yeah.
where these words lose all their taboo power?
It's not a simple yes or no answer.
Right.
Because while those words might be, becoming more prevalent
Mm-hmm.
in certain contexts, like online gaming
Oh, yeah.
or, certain music genres,
Sure, sure.
they still carry a lot of weight in other settings.
Right. You wouldn't expect your kid to, like, drop an F-bomb
Yeah.
during a job interview
Exactly.
or while having dinner with their grandparents.
Exactly.
No, no, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
So it's not about whether or not these words are bad
Right.
in some, like, absolute sense.
It's not black and white.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the nuances of context
Okay.
and teaching kids
Yeah.
how to navigate those different social landscapes.
And that, my friends, is where the real challenge lies.
It is.
How do we teach kids to use language thoughtfully, respectfully, and effectively,
Right.
even in a world where the rules seem to be constantly shifting?
It's tough.
It is tough.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
But that's a topic we'll explore further in part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into this whole world of kids and cursing.
It's a fascinating topic.
It is. It's really fascinating.
And it's one that I think a lot of parents struggle with,
Oh, absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, we've already uncovered some pretty interesting insights
Yeah.
about, how societal norms are shifting
Yeah.
and how the nature of respect itself is kind of evolving.
It's constantly changing.
But, let's get practical.
Okay, I like it.
What can parents actually do
Yeah.
to help their kids, navigate this whole complex linguistic landscape?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
And it's one that, I think about a lot.
Yeah.
And one strategy that I found to be particularly effective
Okay.
is to really try to connect those bad words
Yeah.
to the feelings they can evoke.
So instead of just saying, like, don't curse, it's bad,
Right?
you're suggesting we explain, like, why those words can be hurtful
Yeah.
or offensive.
Help them understand that words have power
Okay.
and that they can make people feel a wide range of emotions,
Sure.
from anger
Yeah.
and sadness
Yeah.
to embarrassment to disrespect,
You're essentially shifting the focus from the word itself
Right.
to the impact it can have on others.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about empathy, really.
It is. It's about putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
And speaking of empathy,
Yes.
another powerful tool, I think, is to encourage kids to consider the context
Oh, absolutely.
in which those words are being used.
Context is everything.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because a word that might be, perfectly acceptable in one setting
Right.
could be totally off limits in another.
Exactly. Like, so.
You might say something like, hey, it's okay to let loose with your friends when you're gaming.
Yeah.
But using that kind of language at the dinner table with grandma
Right.
could really hurt her feelings.
It's about helping them understand that there's a time and a place
Yes.
for everything.
Absolutely.
And that language is no exception.
And you know what? That leads us to another crucial point.
Okay.
The importance of parental modeling.
Oh, yeah.
We touched on this earlier.
We did.
Wow.
Kids are sponges.
They are.
They absorb everything they see and hear.
Everything.
If they hear mom and dad, casually dropping F-bombs around the house,
Yeah.
it's going to send mixed messages.
Absolutely.
No matter how many lectures they get.
It's all about consistency.
Right.
If you're asking your kids to avoid certain language,
Yeah.
you need to hold yourself to that same standard.
It's like that old saying, do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
It just doesn't fly when it comes to something like this.
No, it
They're
doesn't.
so perceptive.
They are. They pick up on everything.
They'll notice those discrepancies.
For sure.
And they might even, call you out on them.
Oh, yeah. And they should.
And rightfully so.
It undermines your credibility.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder for them to take those boundaries seriously.
Okay, so another key aspect of these conversations, I think,
Yeah.
is addressing the why behind the rules.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Instead of just saying, because I said so.
Right, exactly. Because kids, especially as they get older,
Yeah.
they want to understand the reasoning
Right.
behind those expectations.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It helps them, I think, feel more respected
Right.
and more involved in the process.
Yeah, like they're part of the conversation.
rather than just being dictated to.
Exactly.
So when addressing cursing,
Yeah.
take the time to explain why certain words are considered disrespectful or inappropriate in
Yeah.
certain contexts.
Yeah, given that context, that rationale.
For example,
Yeah.
you could say something like, using that word in this situation might make grandma feel uncomfortable because she was raised in a time when that kind of language was considered very rude.
Exactly. You're providing that context, that historical perspective.
Yeah.
You're encouraging them to think critically
Right.
about their language choices.
And who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe that critical thinking will spill over into other areas of their lives as well.
exactly. It's about being mindful,
Yeah.
intentional with your words.
Okay, so all of this sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But what about those moments when a kid just lets loose
Oh, yeah.
with a full-on expletive-laden tirade?
Right. The ones that make you question every parenting decision you've ever made.
Like, where do they even learn those words?
I know, right?
It can be so frustrating
It can.
and challenging.
It is.
But first and foremost, I think we got to try to stay calm.
Yes. Stay calm, stay calm.
Easier said than done, though, right?
I know, especially when your kid's, dropping F-bombs.
Right.
Like, it's going out of style.
It's like their little faces transform.
I know.
And suddenly you're dealing with, a tiny, enraged pirate captain. How do you even respond to that?
Well, I think the first step is to really try to avoid mirroring that heightened emotional state.
Okay.
Reacting with anger or yelling
Yeah.
is just going to escalate the situation.
So take a deep breath.
Exactly.
Count to 10.
Yes.
Maybe picture yourself on a tropical beach somewhere.
Whatever works.
Whatever works.
The key is to regain your composure
Okay.
so you can address the behavior effectively.
And once you've achieved that, you know that state of Zen-like calm.
Right.
What's the best way to proceed?
Yeah.
Should you launch into, a full-blown lecture right then and there?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Sometimes a simple but firm statement
Mm.
is enough.
Okay.
Something like, we don't use that kind of language in our house.
Short, sweet, to the point.
Exactly.
I like it.
And then, if the behavior continues,
Yeah.
you might consider implementing a consequence.
Okay.
But again, try to make it relevant to the offense.
Like maybe they lose some screen time or miss out on a fun activity.
The goal is to help them connect the dots
Yeah.
between their actions and the consequences.
It's about teaching them accountability.
It is. It is.
Okay, but what about those times when it goes beyond just a random outburst?
Okay.
What if you're dealing with a child who seems to be deliberately using cursing to hurt or disrespect others?
Yeah, that's when it's important to dig a little deeper.
Okay.
There might be underlying issues at play.
Like bullying,
Exactly.
anger management problems,
I agree.
or even something going on at school
Yeah.
that's causing them stress.
It's about addressing the root cause of the behavior,
Right.
not just the symptom.
So open communication,
Yes,
active listening,
for sure.
maybe even seeking professional help if needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about going beyond just that surface level
Yeah.
and trying to really understand what's driving that need to lash out
Right.
with hurtful language.
Because ultimately, we want our kids to feel heard,
Yes.
understood, and empowered to express themselves in healthy and respectful ways.
And sometimes that journey involves, navigating some pretty choppy waters.
It does.
Especially in today's world where, like we said, those lines around language and behavior are constantly shifting.
Welcome back to our deep dive. It feels like we've covered a lot of ground
We have.
talking about, the individual dynamics, the psychology,
Mhm.
the parenting strategies around kids and cursing these days.
Absolutely. We've really gone in depth.
But, I'm curious about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Is society as a whole
Okay.
just becoming more accepting of strong language?
It's a question that researchers are really wrestling with.
Right.
And the answer, as you might expect, is a bit nuanced.
Okay.
One study we have actually points to the increasing prevalence of cursing in popular media,
Oh, yeah.
particularly in music.
I was just thinking that. You can hardly turn on the radio these days
Oh.
without hearing a song that would have been totally censored
Right.
a couple of decades ago.
For sure. For sure.
And don't even get me started on some of those streaming series.
Oh, I know.
My grandma would faint.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and this increased exposure, it could be contributing to what some call linguistic normalization.
Okay, so break that down for me.
Basically, what was once considered taboo
Right.
becomes more commonplace.
Okay.
less shocking.
So are we becoming desensitized to strong language? Is that a bad thing?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, some argue that this desensitization
Mm-hmm.
could lead to a decline in the power of language
Okay.
to really convey strong emotions or to truly impact us.
Like if we hear those words all the time,
Yeah.
they might lose their punch.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
A word that's meant to express, extreme anger
Right.
or shock
Yeah.
loses its impact if it's just used casually
Sure.
in everyday conversation.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But but couldn't you also argue
Yeah.
that this shift reflects a more, you know,
Mm.
a more relaxed, less uptight attitude
Right.
towards language in general?
Okay.
Maybe we're moving away from these arbitrary rules
Yeah.
and becoming more comfortable with the natural evolution of how we express ourselves.
That's interesting.
It is, and it's one that I think is definitely worth considering.
Yeah.
It challenges us to reevaluate our assumptions about what constitutes
Right.
appropriate language
I like that.
and to acknowledge that those boundaries can shift over time
Absolutely.
and across different contexts.
Right. So maybe it's not about like banning certain words altogether,
Right.
but rather helping kids understand when and how
Yes,
to
exactly.
use them effectively and
Yeah.
respectfully.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
It all circles back to that idea of context,
Kind of.
being mindful of your audience,
Right.
the setting,
Yeah.
and the potential impact
Of your words.
of your words. Exactly.
So even if society as a whole is becoming more, tolerant of strong language,
Right.
it doesn't mean we have a free pass
No.
to just like let loose with a barrage of expletives
No, not at all.
wherever we go, right?
It highlights the importance of having those open and honest conversations about language,
Yes.
both with our kids
Mhm.
and within our communities.
Because ultimately,
Yeah.
it's about fostering a culture of respect.
Absolutely.
Respect for ourselves.
Respect for others.
Respect for the power of words.
Yes.
To both connect and divide.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put.
And maybe that's the key takeaway from our deep dive today.
I think so.
The way we use language.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, potentially strong or offensive words,
Right.
is a reflection of our values
No.
and our understanding of how those words can impact others.
So well said.
So as you move through the world,
Yeah.
pay attention to how language is being used around you.
Mm,
Challenge your own assumptions
Yeah.
about what's considered acceptable.
exactly.
And most importantly,
Yes.
engage in thoughtful conversations about the evolving nature of language
I love it.
and its power to shape our world.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing
Yes.
and those minds expanding.